book of Ecclesiastes, and Ecclesiastes comes from what Greek word? Ecclesia, the very word from which we get the term church. But here the word is an assembly. And who is calling this assembly? Who? Okay, I've heard a bunch of things. I've heard him called the king. I've heard him called the preacher. And he is also who? Solomon. Okay? So he is calling together this assembly. And who is included in this assembly? All men. Anybody who lives under the sun. Okay? And what is Solomon doing by calling this assembly? What's he talking to them about? Does anybody remember? About what? Yes, about the meaning of life. Okay? Solomon has carried out a massive experiment, hasn't he? And he's been searching and searching and searching for the meaning of life. And he has looked at life from one standpoint. And the standpoint, interestingly enough, is how most people live their lives, isn't it? They live their lives only for today. They live their lives only for this life and nothing else. And that's the majority of people in our world, folks, that live that kind of a life. He started out his experiment, and what did he experiment with? Anybody remember? What was the first thing he looked at? Wisdom. You know, there's a lot of people who, there's this statement that says there is power in knowledge. Is that true? There is. And there's a lot of individuals who go out and they spend a lot of time gaining as much earthly wisdom as they possibly can. But they come to the end of life, and what happens? They die, and a lot of times their wisdom, what? Dies with them, because some people aren't even interested in the wisdom that they've acquired. Okay, so earthly wisdom didn't mean very much. Solomon also said that he gave himself to madness and what? Folly. Okay, madness and folly. And are there people that are out here doing some crazy things in our world? Oh yeah, if it can be done, men try to do it, okay? It's just unbelievable to me. I turn on these television shows and these guys, they're like 3 stories up and they're jumping into a hotel pool. And I just go, are you crazy? And they do about 14 flips by the time they get to the pool, and you're nuts, okay? But yet Solomon says there's wisdom in what? Folly. There's wisdom in that kind of a life, because you learn some lessons. And oftentimes you learn some pretty hard lessons, don't you? Okay? So Solomon experimented with that. I find it interesting that he got to the end of chapter 1 and he says that in wisdom there is grief and what? Grief and sorrow. Just grief and sorrow in all of this wisdom that he acquires. So in chapter 2 he changes his outlook. He changes his search, and he goes and he starts searching for things in a different place. And he says this, I said in mine heart, go to now. I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure. And behold, this also is what? Vanity. Wow. That little word, mirth. Blithesomeness. Boy, that's a long word, isn't it? Blithesomeness. Or glee, involving a festival of some sort. Okay? That's one of the definitions. Joy, mirth, gladness, pleasure, gaiety. Solomon even defines the word when he says this, therefore enjoy pleasure. So he went out and he tried to find everything that individuals are experimenting with, that are using to bring what to their lives? Pleasure or mirth. Notice that he said, I will prove thee. Okay? Again, indicating that he's experimenting. What's he attempting to find? The meaning of life. That's what he's trying to find. Why am I here? Why am I on this earth? What is going to bring me joy and happiness? And let's get out there and let's experiment a little bit with pleasure. asked this question in my notes. How many people try to find fulfillment in pleasure? Are there a bunch of them out there? Oh, there's a bunch of folks, okay? Some of it involves sinful pleasures, doesn't it? And I wrote some down there. Drinking, partying, wild nights, dancing, drugs, sex. If I can just get out there and just get involved in all of that kind of stuff, guess what? It'll bring meaning to life. We made note last week that there are many individuals who work the whole week to live for the what? For the weekend. Because that's when the party starts, isn't it? Okay? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I used to work with some guys I unloaded automobiles off of rail cars. And these were some of the roughest guys I've ever seen in my life. I mean, unbelievable. Friday and Saturday come. The main day I worked was Sunday. Okay? And the reason was because all the guys that were in seniority above me were just wasted Sunday morning, and they couldn't come in. They felt so miserable. Okay? But they just lived for the weekend. And you wouldn't believe all the stuff they talked about. Okay? They were just the most ungodly group of guys. They were nice, just ungodly kind of guys. But folks, notice this next one. Some trying to find pleasures in things that are not sinful per se. Notice the list. Sports, hobbies, crafts, vacations, celebrations. If I can just what? If I can just have fun all the time, then life has meaning. And yet Solomon's conclusion was this. Behold, this also is what? Vanity. Folks, these things are empty and unfulfilling. Those kind of things do not bring lasting joy and happiness. Note, all of the benefit of these things come to an end when? At death. I don't care how much you've partied. I don't care how much you've felt good. I don't care how much you've laughed with others. Guess what? When you come to the end, you just what? You die and you leave it all behind. And probably your friends will party at your funeral. Isn't that true? Notice this. Ecclesiastes 2:2. I said of laughter, it is mad. And of mirth, what doeth it? In this verse, Solomon speaks to the results of pleasure. Okay? Individuals want to have a what? A good time, don't they? And individuals want to get out there and they want to laugh, don't they? And Solomon says, laughter, it's mad. Let me ask you this. What kind of laughter is he talking about? Turn over to another passage. In fact, it's right there in your notes, I think. Proverbs 17:22. What does the Bible say? A merry heart doeth good like a what? Like a medicine. Now, here Solomon is who says laughter is what? Laughter is mad. And yet, in a book that is said to have been written by Solomon, the Proverbs, he says, a merry heart doeth good like what? Like a medicine. There's a contradiction, isn't it? Same man says laughter is bad, and he says merriment is good. So how do you reconcile the two? What's he talking about? Okay, it depends on what you're doing to get the laughter. Okay, that's part of it for certain. Okay. Okay. So some people just want to make life just totally a joke or a party or whatever. Is there good in laughter? Yes. Folks, he's not talking about an occasional laugh, an occasional joke, an occasional time when you just, chuckle so loud that you start crying practically. He says There are times like that in life that what? Yes, a merry heart does good like a what? Like a medicine. Okay? You ever had those times when you've been kind of down, all of a sudden you start laughing, and you say, you know, I haven't laughed like that in a long time. And it just what? Just makes you feel good. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about these people who give their lives to what? To mirth and to pleasure. Those are the individuals who are laughing constantly. He is speaking of the crazy laughter that springs from revelry and partying. Those in a drunken stupor laugh at everything, don't they? It's unbelievable. Those who take drugs laugh at the crazy things they might say or do. I remember one time we were canoeing down a river, and all of a sudden we hear these two canoes behind us, and man, they're loud, and they're laughing, and they're acting stupid. They're jumping up in the water, they're turning over their canoes, they're getting back in their canoes, and all of a sudden they catch up to us. Each canoe, 3 drunk girls, just having the time of their life, they thought, okay? Just the goofiest things, you know, and you just look at it, and they couldn't hardly talk. They were so drunk. And here they were out on a river, just laughing, having this good time. And guess what they thought? This is what life's all about. This is fun. And Solomon said what? That kind of laughter is mad, isn't it? Notice he also says this. Glee is, or mirth, he says, what doeth it? The question that Solomon asking is this: what does it produce in an individual's life? Colin DeLitch made a good comment. He says, which disregards the earnestness of life and all due bounds. He is constrained to say, what does it result in? That it produces nothing, that it brings forth no real fruit, that it produces only the opposite of true satisfaction. Instead of filling, it only enlarges an inner void. The more you do, the more you what? Have to do more. Okay? What used to take 1 beer now takes 2. What used to take 2 beers now takes a 6-pack. What takes a 6-pack now takes a case. It never stops, does it? You see, there's no real fulfillment in this, folks. It only gets what? It only gets worse. He says, what doeth it? What good is it in your life to do these kind of things? Notice that question. Notice that next point. What is amazing is that people continue to participate in this vain laughter and glee as if it does something for them. They look forward to the next time they'll engage in revelry, don't they? I can't wait to party again. Can't wait for the weekend again. I can't wait to get smashed again. They get to the end of life. About all you can put on their tombstone is this: here we buried a drunk man. What good is it, folks? What has it done for the person's life? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. And that's what Solomon is trying to get across. Now, I find it interesting in Ecclesiastes 2:3 that he says that he turns to this particular avenue, and listen to what he says. I sought in mine heart to give myself unto what? Unto wine. Uh-oh. We've just entered into a controversial subject, have we not? Now remember, Solomon is experimenting with what? Joy and pleasure and glee and mirth. And you know what Solomon knows? Wine is where people try to find this kind of stuff. Solomon gave himself to wine. Beer, wine, strong drink holds a powerful influence in the lives of a lot of people, does it not? Just look at those points. The wine business in the United States produces $49.8 billion of revenue a year. Man. The beer industry produces $768.17 billion in revenue per year. 202 billion liters of liquid is consumed in the United States each year. Now that's liquid, good and bad. Okay? Alcohol consists of 16.5% of that figure. 33 billion, 330 million liters of alcohol is consumed in the United States every year. That's 16%, folks, of that 202 billion liters. And that figure rises year after year after year. You want a good investment? Put it where? In alcohol. You're guaranteed to make money. Okay? Now, I'm not saying go do that. I'm just saying if you're looking for a good investment, that's where it is. I find it interesting that Solomon puts wine into two categories in this verse. Let's go back to the verse. I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom. And to do what? To lay hold on folly. Solomon puts the drinking of wine into two categories. He says, when you drink wine, you'll get what? You'll get some wisdom. And when you drink wine, you're going to be participating in what? Folly. Isn't that interesting? Now remember, evil things can produce wisdom. Can't they? What do you call a man who is a recovering alcoholic? They call themselves an alcoholic. Still. Okay? That's what they call. My father was one. Okay? So they go to these AA meetings and they still call themselves alcoholics. They never truly what? Get over alcoholism. Okay? They learn to manage it. They learn not to drink. They learn to resist the temptations. But they know that there's always that propensity for me to go back to alcohol. Okay? Do you think a recovering alcoholic has a lot of wise words to tell someone who wants to drink? Let me tell you something, folks. They got a lot of wisdom. They've been in a lot of situations. They've been in a lot of places. They've lost a lot of things. They've experienced a lot of hurt. And if you'll listen to them, guess what? They have some wisdom to tell, don't they? Larry?
My mother was never an alcoholic. But her wisdom to me was, if you never take the first drink, you won't have to quit.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. I've always been amazed in the church. There's always been this idea about social drinking, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, right? And we fight that battle all the time. And to me, I just think there's some passages in Scripture that if we read them and if we understand them, that you really don't have that problem. Let me ask you this. Does the Bible teach us that God wants us to be sober people? Turn over to Titus chapter 2. Titus chapter 2. It's in the New Testament, guys. Listen to what Paul does, beginning in verse 1. But speak thou the things which become sound, what? Doctrine. Usually when we think about speaking sound doctrine, we think about things like baptism, instrumental music, the oneness of the church, right? Proper worship. Those are the kind of things that we associate with doctrine. I find it interesting that we don't have a period at the end of this sentence, do we? And Paul says, but speak thou the things which become sound doctrine. And then listen to what he says. That the aged men be what? Sober. sober. Drop down to verse 3. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober. Old women, teach young women to be what? Sober. Folks, you can't teach something you ain't. You know? Now jump down to verse 4. I'm sorry. Where am I? Yep. Huh? Well, I'm not worried about the New King James. But you look at verse 6. Young men likewise exhort to be what? Sober-minded. Folks, I want you to go up and do a study of the word sober. I don't care how it's translated. I want you to go and do a study of the word sober. Okay? And there's a very simple, easy definition of sober. You want to know what it is? Not intoxicated. Not intoxicated. That's one of the first definitions. Not intoxicated. The very moment you put something into your body, does it change your body? Yeah. Folks, I don't care how much or little it is. The very moment you inject, the minute I take for instance, when I go on a trip now, because I had blood clots, I have to take, what's it called, Kathleen? Xarelto. Okay? Let me tell you something. That is a potent blood thinner. You know that? They give me that, and within an hour or two, my blood runs like water through my veins. Okay? But on a daily basis, guess what they want me to take? A baby aspirin. 81 grams. To keep my blood what? Thin. It's a whole lot less than the Xarelto, but it still works on my what? On my blood. Don't tell me that the minute you start drinking, that it's not changing the chemical compounds in your body. It is. Okay? It starts, you begin to quit being what? Sober. Okay? And the Bible instructs us to be what kind of people? Sober-minded. To me, all you need is that one broad principle. And that'd keep all of us away from what? From liquor. Why do I want anything in my body that's going to cause me not to be sober-minded? Why? Rodney? Right. It's true. Have y'all heard the commercial? Buzz driving is drunk driving. Y'all heard that commercial? Isn't that amazing? They're meeting what? A person, even though he may not have reached the level of what is considered drunk, even if you've just had a beer, they say buzz driving is what? Drunk driving. They admit the minute you put something into your body, it affects how you drive. And they tell you, don't drive like that. Get somebody else to drive for you. Gene? It says not given to much wine. Okay? When you do a study of that, what he's telling them is this: don't be what? Don't be intoxicated. Okay? The way we read it, it's like, let me see. I'd have to go back and do there's a passage that says, not given to excess. Okay? Talking about immoral living. So what is Paul saying? Is he saying it's okay to participate in a little? Okay? That's not what he's saying. He's saying what? You get away from excess living. You get away from any of this stuff, okay? Even a little bit is not acceptable, okay? Look at Proverbs 20, verse 1. Same book, or same writer, I mean. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is what? Is not wise. Proverbs 21:17. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be what? Rich. Proverbs 23:39 through 42. That may be 29 through 32, not 39. Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine, that go to seek mixed wine. Look thou not upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth his color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. Solomon says, don't even look at it when it's what? Intoxicated in the cup. Don't even look at it. Isn't that what he says? Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth his color in the cup. Folks, the Scriptures warn us not to what? Not to be individuals who are given to this ungodly stuff. Okay? What do they call beer? The devil's brew. You ever heard that? The devil's brew. Okay? Things that cause heartache, things that cause misery, things that cause individuals to be embarrassed, things that cause people to be poor, things that cause individuals to die, things that cause people to do stupid stuff, and for some reason we as Christians want to participate in that. Why? Mike? Be a fight? It's tough. It's tough. I just find it interesting that when Solomon gets to mirth and pleasure, he throws what in there? Wine. He just immediately, he drops that right into the realm of pleasure. And remember, it's right in this discussion about all being what? Vanity. Folks, this stuff right here, Solomon says, is what? It's empty. It's useless. It doesn't do a person one bit of good. Okay? Now, individuals will always, raise the question, what about medicine? Okay? Drink a little wine for what? For thy stomach's sake. Medicinal purposes, folks, under the care of a physician are totally different than just our drinking pleasures. Okay? Questions, comments? Ma'am. Oh, yeah. No consistency. They don't have to worry about cigarettes anymore. Marion? Same thing. Oh, yeah, it's becoming a popular, That's what you'll find is our society is degenerating, okay? And we are participating in things that will destroy us as a nation, okay? And God wants His people to be totally different from what? From the world. Love not the world, neither the things that are therein. He wants us to be different from the world. And how can we do what the world does and be different from the world at the same time? That's hard to do. Kevin? Okay. Absolutely. Who else had their hand up over here? Jeannie, was that you again? Yes. Right. Yeah, yeah. As long as we're doing it under a doctor's care for the purpose that it's designed for, there's no problem in that. But when we start out here, you can argue with me or you can argue with Solomon. Solomon says what? Wine falls in the category of vanity, of emptiness, of wastefulness, of uselessness. And it's right here in the middle of his discussion of what? Mirth and madness and folly and pleasure. He throws wine right in the middle of that. And he says, guys, it's just empty. It doesn't mean anything. Oh, it wouldn't surprise me if Solomon didn't partake in some of that. It just wouldn't surprise me. Okay, Solomon had the ability to do a lot of things. Okay, and Solomon wasn't a perfect man by any means, was he? Not at all. He gets to verse 4, and this is an interesting statement. Notice what he says in Ecclesiastes 2:4. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. Okay, preacher. You don't want me engaging in any fun, right? You don't want me out here getting wise. So guess what I'll do? I'll just give myself to what? W-O-R-K, work. I'll just work. Let me tell you something, folks. If there were ever a king who were a builder, guess who it was? Solomon. You go back and you read about Solomon's life, and Solomon was an unbelievable builder. Okay? True or false? We work a great portion of our lives. True. Sometimes more than half of our lives are spent working. True or false? In our work, we use our talents and our abilities. True. Okay? Well, I hope most people aren't they? True or false? Our work contributes to our well-being. Yeah. Need to work, don't we? In our work, we find riches, achievement, promotion, and reward, don't we? How many of you in here have worked? Yeah, you don't need to raise your hands. Okay. Every one of us in here have given ourselves to work, haven't we? I just find it interesting that Solomon says, I made me great works. You know what he's trying to do? He's trying to find satisfaction in what? In work. Folks, it isn't there. It's not there. Solomon said, I builded houses. Does anybody know what kind of houses Solomon built? He bought a temple for the who? For the Lord. He made his own house that took him about 7 years to build. Folks, that's a pretty massive structure. Okay, 7 years. You could build my tiny house in a couple of months. Okay. He built Pharaoh's daughter, whom he married, a house. That's the way you stay happily married. That's a joke. Husband and wife have separate houses, you're in good shape. Okay? Solomon knew that. I bet Solomon had 1,000 houses that he built for them women. Okay? Solomon also built what is known as the House of Lebanon. Okay, a house of cedar. 4 houses that the Scriptures make mention of, massive houses. Okay? Unbelievable. The Bible says he also planted vineyards. Listen to Song of Solomon 8, 11, and 12. Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Hammon. He let out the vineyard unto keepers. Every one for fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. My vineyard which is mine is before me. Thou, O Solomon, must have 1,000, and those that keep the fruit thereof 200. Solomon had vineyards and houses and all kinds of structures that he had built. Unbelievable. Did he have the ability to build anything he wanted to? Absolutely. Notice verse 5, what he says. I made me gardens and orchards. I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruits. He's not done yet, is he? Why do people build big houses for two people? Huh? A memorial. Okay, that for what? Okay. Pride. Okay, pride's a reason. What's another reason? What's that? Prestige. You know, you're able to brag about. We went down to, Winter Haven or Winter Gardens, whatever it is down there where those houses are on those lakes down near Orlando. And they were bragging about how much each house cost. Okay? And you can't brag about how much your house cost until it's totally built. Okay? But they had one there is like $8 million, something like that. And they were building another one. It was going to cost like $10 million. And so it was going to be the fanciest one. But they couldn't brag about it yet because it hadn't been complete. Just unbelievable. You know, some people build them for tax advantage, right? You know, you need something to get your taxes off. But there's just all kinds of reasons, you know, when you don't even need that much room. And you don't need that much space. And yet they just build and build and build as if that house is going to bring them some kind of happiness. And not a lick. Jim? Oh, man. Unbelievable, isn't it? Oh, yes. Absolutely. Larry? Gone. Absolutely. It's gone. You know, none of our homes, you know, regardless of what we have, you know, we have a lot nicer stuff here than they do in a third world, don't they? You know, and we think we need this stuff, and yet we're just going to die and what? Leave it all behind as well, you know. Rodney, you had your hand up again? Rodney, did you have your hand up a while ago? Isn't it funny? After you get your house all built, right? You know, you have to clear a lot, don't you? Just clear it. Take all the stuff out of it practically. Then you get your house built, and then what do you have to do? Yeah, you got to bring the trees back. You got to landscape it all again, right? And so everybody is competing for yard of the month or yard of the quarter. I've told Kathleen I wish I could go to Home Depot one day, and they have those backyard guys, you know, that do those backyard, they come in and just take over your backyard. I've got a backyard I want so badly, or I'd love to have. And the way I'd want it done is this. You walk out my back door, and you got a path that you follow. And it doesn't matter how big the yard is, okay? It can be a small yard, but you follow this path, and it just goes all the way, you just make it windy, all the way around the backyard. But in between the two paths are shrubs and other things so that you can't see the other side of that path. So you got plants here. And along the way, you've got a swing. Along the way, you've got a spa. Along the way, you've got a couple of lawn chairs that you can just stop and sit in. Hey, that's what I want. It'd be wonderful, wouldn't it? I want my garden, you know. If those guys, backyard crashers, I think is what it's called, those guys, they'd have a time with me, boy. Does anybody know one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. I put a picture in the notes there, and nobody knows exactly what those gardens looked like. But can you imagine? Babylon was a world power, was it not? Individuals like Nebuchadnezzar ruled over that kingdom. Folks, they had all the money, all the finances they could possibly imagine. And they built themselves gardens. Solomon planted gardens. The Bible says this, I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. Question. Do gardens have benefits? They do, don't they? They provide exercise to the physical body. They provide beauty to the eyes. They provide food for the physical body. They also can provide therapy to the inner man, can't they? And yet Solomon says, if you're living for your gardens, then what? It's vanity. Drought, disease, insects, wars, and desertion can easily destroy every one of those creations, can't they? Here's the question. Where are the hanging gardens of Babylon today? Beverly saw them on YouTube, folks. Okay? There you have it. Okay? Everything's on YouTube, isn't it? Y'all just go home this afternoon and Google it. Okay? That woman knows how to steal the show. Good stuff. Thank you.